design would you think that the topic of lavender covered notebook or journal would be or would have? Hi, this is Shoshanah Shear coming to you from Jerusalem. You'll find my online store at creationsfromjerusalem.com. In today's video, I want to answer a question or a comment that was sent to me on a message on Facebook from somebody who interacted in a short workshop, a short course that I did that got me started on creating journals, notebooks, and I'm hoping to get into doing some other workbooks and other kinds of low content and medium content books. So the question or the comment was why it is that if in the course a keyword offered to us or shared with us was about a lavender covered notebook. And her response was that I'd made a mistake in my interpretation of the cover because it was supposed to be the color of lavender and not lavender itself. Now, if you have a look at the notebooks that I created, the first one actually is not the design that I wanted. The image that I wanted to use was not uploading for whatever reason into the cover creator on KDP, and so I tried to find one of the designs or one of the images that was available on KDP's free images and decided to use an abstract picture that had a little bit of lavender in it. From there I went on to create my second notebook, and you'll find that coming up on the screen now. And the second one, as you see, has lavender. And in the description, I mention a little bit about the potential to do some writing about learning about the herb, which is lavender, called lavender. And there are all sorts of things that one could write in a notebook, whether it's learning about the amount of water, the time of day to water, how much to water, what you can do with lavender. There are all sorts of ideas and a wealth of information that you can learn about lavender. It really is a remarkable herb. Now, if you look behind me, there's a tablecloth. Well, it's more of a mat that goes onto a tablecloth that I painted quite some years ago as a gift for my late grandmother. She was alive at the time, thank goodness. That would sound like a strange gift to give, wouldn't it? But my grandmother was alive at the time, and this is one of the gifts that I gave to her. And on it are 4 bunches of lavender in the 4 different and pointing in the 4 different angles towards the corners of the table mat. And you can see that these are lavender, and the color used is the more purplish, bluish purplish range of lavender. So with that as an introduction, I would say that as an artist and a creative person, I like to think outside the box, and here you'll see a little idea I had for a t-shirt of thinking outside the box. Anyway, let's get back to our lavender story. And the truth is that the color lavender, if you look at it from an artistic point of view, there's a range of the color lavender. There's the purplish kind of color. Then there's what's called lavender gray, and there's what's called lavender blue. And I've used some of these tones in the lavender that's painted on the table mat behind me. The border obviously was more of a blue that I used. The colors coming up behind me are not quite 100% accurate to the table mat in person. But it gives you a little bit of an idea of the fact that lavender is not one standard color. Now, to go a little bit further, if we think of the herb lavender, lavender doesn't come in one color only. Lavender does not only come in the purplish kind of range of lavender. There are flowers of the herb lavender that range from white through to the purplish lavender color through to pinks. So there are a range of different colors that you'll find these beautiful flowers coming in. Now, to answer the next comment related to this as to why did I come up with a cover design that was of the herb lavender as opposed to the color lavender, and the person's response was that there's a certain group of people who believe that lavender is the color that represents God, And here I wish to challenge a little bit as to how can one assign any color to God. The truth is that there are times that we will talk about the hand of God and the ear of God and so on, and certain characteristics from human beings, but it's used in the sense of trying to explain a concept or how to connect with God. The truth is that there's so much and so little that we know about God, because God, what we do know is that God is one, is united, and yet is infinite. Now, if we're talking about the infinite God, God himself existed before anything else. We know from the beginning of the Chumash, from the Torah, the first sentence or the first phrase or clause to be used was Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created. That's the usual way of translating these words. We're not getting into the full translation now. What we would like to say is that when God came to start creating, God created everything. He created words, he created light, he created color, he created everything. God is above everything and bigger than everything. So the truth is, we cannot use a color to describe God. God is above, is bigger than color. So from that point of view, I would not say that I would use lavender as a description of God. God is infinite, and to a certain extent, the only thing that we can say in Hebrew, we say Ein Sof. There is no end to God. So that's just a little bit of a thought in my response to considering that the color lavender is supposed to represent God. I don't agree with that. God is bigger than color. God is before color. God created color. And why limit God to, why choose one of the colors of the spectrum and say God is going to be that color only? God is bigger. God is infinite. God is everything. So that's just my first thought response to that. And to come back to lavender, why did I think of lavender? Well, from a few points of view. Firstly, I love the herb lavender. Secondly, I remembered this table mat that I'd painted many years ago as a gift that I gave to my grandmother. And the next thing is that we've been considering putting some flowers, some pot plants on our merpeset, on our balcony. And one of the ideas that I thought of as a type of flower would be from the range of lavender, because they're quite hardy, and because I love herbs, and because lavender does very well in this climate in Israel. So lavender was on my mind anyway. But as I say, I love the herb, and I found it would be useful to have a journal with a cover that's attractive with an image of lavender as the herb on it. And it could be quite beneficial if you're doing any gardening, if you're wanting to learn more about the herb, if you're wanting to consider what could you do with this herb. You could dry the herb, you could use lavender oil. Essential oils are beneficial for all sorts of healing properties. Lavender can be used in all sorts of ways. Why don't you do a search yourself and come up with how many different ways could you use the herb lavender? And maybe you'll start to agree with me that there's so much you could learn that potentially you could fill a notebook with it. So that's a little bit of the idea as to how I came to the cover design in my first two journals, my first two notebooks that I created. You'll find a link to these notebooks in the show notes below. And if you have any questions about any of the other notebooks or journals that I've created so far, do send me a comment. I'd love to hear your questions, and if there's anything that I could share that's of benefit to others, I'm happy to create another video. So it's Shoshanah Shear from Jerusalem, and if you want to visit my online store to see some of the other creative gifts that I have available, the link is creationsfromjerusalem.com, and you can also find some more information to the role of wife and mother on my other website, which is beahappymom.com. Have a wonderful day, and bye for now.